Pseudo-legendaries are without a doubt some of the strongest Pokemon in the entire game. And while the grouping itself isn't technically recognized by Game Freak, the qualifications to be classified as one are as follows. You're the final stage of a 3-stage evolutionary line, you have a base stat total of exactly 600, and the Pokemon itself must also be in the slow experience group. Now, as things currently stand, there are 11 pseudo-legendaries in total, and so today, I'm gonna be ranking them all from worst to best. These rankings will mostly be based on how powerful and strong they can be in battle, both competitively speaking and while in game. But I will also consider other things like their design or their roles in other Pokemon media as well. But before we begin, I'd appreciate a big like on this video as it helps me out a ton. Alright then, with all of that out of the way, let's get started. Coming in dead last is Goodra, or Goodra. While I can appreciate its lovable design and nature, it just simply can't compare to these other behemoths. By all means, Goodra is easily the most underwhelming of any pseudo-legendary. I mean, just look no further than its typing alone. It is the only pseudo to actually be monotype. And with it debuting in Generation 6, that means the fairy typing was right there to further cripple it. It's also really the only pseudo to be more focused on the defensive side of things. It's not that that's inherently a bad thing, but both in competitive battle and during a common playthrough, most players would much rather have your pseudo fill the role of something like a sweeper than a true wall. I also have to note that the Sligo to Goodra evolution method can be a bit frustrating. While evolving pretty much any pseudo can be difficult, Goodra's method in particular is extra annoying. This is because you have to level up Sligo while it's raining in the overworld. And the problem with that is, in pretty much every single game, tracking down rain in the overworld can be nearly impossible. Finally, Goodra was of course on Ash Ketchum's Kalos team. And while this certainly gave this underwhelming pseudo some much needed attention, it kind of fell off hard after having a very strong start in the series. To close out on Goodra, I don't think that anyone will ever deny that it's the most underwhelming and, dare I say, most forgettable pseudo of all time. It's not that it's downright bad, it's just that it pales in comparison to all the others. In 10th place is Kommo-o. Kommo-o is good, just good. It's not a world beater by any means, but it's definitely a very solid Pokemon and a welcome addition to pretty much any team. Now on paper, just about everything about Kommo-o is awesome. It's got a great design, its dragon and fighting type can be surprisingly good, and it even got a unique Z-move with its clangorous Soul Blaze attack. But for whatever reason, Kommo-o was just never really to excel in really anything. It's kind of a jack-of-all-trades pseudo who's not actually the master of anything. Its stats are decent, but again, it's a pseudo who kind of prioritizes defense. Luckily though, it does get access to a variety of great setup moves to bolster its already solid stats, which all in all allows it to be a very decent threat while in battle. But I genuinely believe that Kommo-o's biggest issue is that it just lacks popularity. Unlike Garchomp, Dragonite, or even Metagross, there's just no strong association between Kommo-o and any major character in the series. No champion, villain team leader, or even a rival takes the time to show it off. And even in the anime series, it didn't ever really get any time to shine. The only real moment in the spotlight that it ever got was a late-game totem battle exclusive to the Ultra games, which, let's be honest, just isn't the highest of honors. There's no doubt in my mind that Kommo-o had all the potential to be a top-tier pseudo, but due to the fairy typing and its lack of overall popularity, it might just be doomed to mediocrity for its entire existence. In 9th is Hisuian Goodra. I think I speak for all Pokemon fans when I say it was very surprising to see Goodra of all Pokemon receive a new regional form in Legends Arceus. But it ended up being a very welcome addition, as it turned out to be a massive upgrade from its base form. It takes pretty much everything about regular Goodra and gives it a much needed coat of polish. Its new Steel and Dragon typing is without a doubt one of the best in the entire game. Suddenly, Goodra can now wall a lot of common threats, as well as take advantage of its huge natural bulk. Meanwhile, it now kind of has the advantage over the fairy typing rather than being totally destroyed by it. I actually used one on my first playthrough of Legends Arceus, and it turned out to be a major tank on my team and pretty much always pulled through in the major battles. I also think its new design is a pretty solid upgrade from its base form. Here, it's fully embraced the whole snail gimmick and now has a full shell on its back that rightly justifies the new steel typing. With all of this being said, Hisuian Goodra is a great regional form. Well, no, it's not game-breaking enough to allow it to rank higher towards the upper echelon of pseudos. By all means, is just a very solid Pokemon, and I definitely will always recommend it. Next up, we have Hydreigon. Hydreigon is a bit of a tricky one. When Black and White first came out, Hydreigon was an absolute monster. The Dark and Dragon typing was brand new, and it kind of felt like Game Freak had just given us the ultimate special attacker. With its massive special attack and a killer move pool that included moves like Dark Pulse, Draco Meteor, and Fire Blast, Hydreigon looked like the new and arguably the best pseudo period. And throughout the Generation 5 era, it kind of was. But then came Generation 6, and with it came the introduction of the fairy typing. And with that, Hydreigon's reign was essentially over before it even really started. And now, in the modern meta, all you can really do is slap a choice specs on it and kinda just hope for the best. But with all the faster threats and priority users out there, Hydreigon often finds itself outpaced and outclassed. It's also really hard to actually acquire this Pokemon too. Getting a Zweilous all the way up to level 64 is beyond ridiculous, and that makes it easily the hardest pseudo-legendary to actually obtain. But I don't want this entry to come across as exclusively negative, as there still is a lot of good with Hydreigon. I'd argue that it actually boasts one of the greatest designs of the entire pseudo collection. Seeing as it is known as the brutal Pokemon, its design is perfectly fitting, especially seeing as it's often found on the teams of villainous leaders. But unfortunately, Hydreigon just has not aged all that well at all. While I can definitely appreciate its design and its prime during its debut generation, it just lacks any real pop to keep it relevant in modern formats. But before we continue, let's hear a quick word from the sponsor of this video, Manta Sleep. Now, I've been using their Silk Sleep Mask for about 2 weeks now, and it has really helped improve my sleep. With it being summer here in the US, the days are a lot longer and brighter, and that's why Manta Sleep has been so essential for me. If you want to improve your sleep, then you have got to check out Manta Sleep. So, be sure to click the link in the video's description and use my code MINUS for 10% off your first order. And thank you again to Manta Sleep. In 7th is the most recent pseudo with Baxcalibur. It might be a bit surprising to see the pseudo of Paldea landing so high on this list. Now originally, I was not a fan of it at all. I was just totally uninterested in it when it first got revealed. I mean, really? Another pseudo-legendary based on Godzilla? Boring! But then, I actually used one in my first playthrough of Pokemon Scarlet, and it honestly carried my entire team. I've definitely got to give Baxcalibur some major props for making the ice typing look really good. Prior to this, the ice typing was pretty good offensively, but an absolute joke defensively. And so knowing this, we rarely saw any ice-type Pokemon that were truly viable for the metagame. But Baxcalibur has totally changed the narrative of the entire typing and earned it some real respect. I also think its stat spread is relatively good too. While its speed stat is a little low, it of course gets access to Dragon Dance, which will fix that while also giving it more attack power. That then leaves it free to blast Glaive Rush and Outrage at anything standing in its way. Now, I really believe that Baxcalibur is a great pseudo-legendary. And I'd argue that it honestly might be the most underrated of the entire bunch. And all I'm saying is don't be surprised if in the near future it inches its way up higher and higher on these rankings. Next up, we have Salamence. Now, we're entering the realm of elite pseudo-legendaries. All of the remaining mons are all iconic and can be absolutely game-breaking. And we now begin here with Salamence. By all means, Salamence is probably the biggest threat, offensively speaking, when it comes to any of the pseudo-legendaries. While it's always hit very hard, it's actually gotten stronger over time, with things like the physical special split, as well as it gaining the Moxie ability. And that's not to mention that it's almost always greatly benefit from each of the new battling gimmicks. Now of course, many of these pseudos did receive Mega Evolutions during the 6th generation, but Salamence's Mega form is far and away the most busted of them all. In its prime, Megamence was a massive threat in battle, with its kit including Aerialate, Dragon Dance, Double Edge, and Roost. It could really do just about whatever it wants in battle while ripping through opposing teams. I overall really like Salamence. It can be an absolute beast in battle, and I often find myself using one on pretty much any Hoenn playthrough I use. While it's kind of a grind to obtain it in such a late part of the story, the end result is well worth it. The two reasons as to why I didn't place Salamence any higher is because, 1, it's a bit of a knockoff of Dragonite, and while it does outpace it in a couple of aspects, Dragonite is objectively better in battle while also being much older. Also, Salamence's design isn't quite as solid as Dragonite's either. And 2, because Salamence isn't even the best pseudo from its own region. In 5th place is Dragapult. Dragapult is just one awesome Pokemon. If you know me, you know that I wasn't that big of a fan of the Sword and Shield games. But Game Freak absolutely nailed it with Dragapult. Everything about it is just so sick. I mean, it's literally based on a military-grade fighter jet. It's also the Ghost and Dragon typing, and I think we all know that that's arguably the greatest typing in all of Pokemon. I also have to highlight its signature attack, Dragon Darts, a move where it launches its own Dreepy children at the target. The move itself is also quite good, as it's a multi-hit stab attack that can do massive damage while also foregoing any focus sash. Dragapult is also far and away the fastest of any of the pseudos. It boasts a wicked fast 142 speed stat, which is better than about 95% of all Pokemon. And meanwhile, of course, it also gets access to Dragon Dance, which makes it move even faster while also hitting even harder. Also, in both the games and in the anime, Champion Leon's Dragapult was portrayed to be an absolute monster. Well, no, it wasn't technically his true ace. I really found myself struggling with it the most, thanks in large part to its great typing and speed. In closing on Dragapult, it is certainly one of the greatest modern Pokemon we've received in many years. From its design, to its typing, to its strength in battle, everything about it is beyond great. Next up is Metagross. Metagross is without a doubt the most unique pseudo-legendary we've gotten thus far in Pokemon. Its design is actually the most bold, as instead of being this massive kaiju-esque monster, Metagross instead is basically a supercomputer spider, which I think is just absolutely awesome and really helps it stick out amongst the others. It also has the most unique typing of the bunch, with it being the only mon to not have any typing overlap with any of the other pseudos. Now in battle, Metagross has always remained dominant. The steel typing has only gotten better with time, and Metagross also has a beautiful stat distribution. It can absolutely tank hits, while also retaliating with some massive attacks of its own. And of course, in the ORAS games, the powerful pseudo got even stronger with its incredible new Mega form. Mega Meta was just a monster, and it now was much faster while also gaining the Tough Claws ability. Ultimately, this made Metagross one of the biggest threats during the entire Gen 6 and Gen 7 meta. Like many other pseudos on this list, Metagross is synonymous with a single trainer, That, of course, being the dashing Steven Stone. The battles with his Metagross in both Gen 3 and Gen 6 are without a shadow of a doubt the toughest fights in the entire Hoenn region. And even in the anime series, it was beyond cool to see Steven partnered with a shiny Mega Metagross that took part in some awesome battles. My only real fault I have with Metagross is that I was never able to naturally use one in a playthrough of Hoenn. Seeing as Steven only gives us a Beldum in the post-game, it's kind of a bit hard to ever grow a real sentimental connection with it. Taking third is the OG Dragonite. There's really just so much that I adore about Dragonite. It is the original pseudo-legendary, and even after 9 generations, it has truly stood the test of time. The first thing that I want to make note of is its incredible design. With pretty much all of the other pseudos, they're rough, rigid, and scary looking. But Dragonite is this mushy and motherly cute little dragon. But that doesn't mean that it's a pushover in battle. Quite the contrary, actually, as unsurprisingly, Dragonite is a beast. With its great stats and move pull, it can really be the perfect sweeper, especially if you're able to get up a Dragon Dance or two. Meanwhile, in any Kanto game, it can be a real grind to get your Dragonair up to level 55, but once you do, it is well worth it, as Dragonite will likely anchor your in-game team. In any of those games, it's without a doubt the best non-legendary to use in a common playthrough. And of course, Dragonite has always played a massive role in other forms of media. It's always been pretty synonymous with Lance as his ace Pokemon. But of course, in Pokemon Journeys, Ash Ketchum himself finally captured and used a Dragonite. And she would go on to become one of his greatest Pokemon ever. This all really just proves that Dragonite is definitely the most iconic pseudo-legendary of all time. It forever set the standard for the archetype, and I can't wait to use its new Mega form in Legend Z to A. Taking second is none other than Garchomp. If Dragonite set the standard for pseudo-legendaries, then Garchomp perfected it. This land shark Pokemon burst onto the scene in Generation 4, and since then, it's remained a top-tier Pokemon. Of course, one can't really discuss Garchomp without including the iconic champion that it's synonymous with, Cynthia. To many, this duo is the strongest in the entire mainline series, and Garchomp ultimately helped make Cynthia one of the toughest battles ever. What makes Garchomp so imposing in battle is a combination of a couple things. First, when we look at its stats, nothing really jumps off the page at you. However, its distribution is surprisingly well balanced. Its 130 attack stat is good enough to one-shot most Pokemon with moves like Outrage or Earthquake, and then Garchomp's speed stat is just good enough to outspeed a ton of common threats, such as Charizard, Flygon, or Haxorus. Garchomp also has an incredible moveset, with access to moves like Swords Dance, Outrage, Earthquake, Dragon Tail, Stealth Rocks, and Spikes. It has a very versatile kit, allowing it to be run in a multitude of different ways. Now, Garchomp is so good, in fact, that many believe its base form to outclass its own Mega form. Well, personally, I don't necessarily agree with this take. I do understand that Mega Garchomp does lose a bit of speed, but I mean, look at its attack stat. That is just wicked high. But Mega or not, Garchomp on its own has remained one outstanding Pokemon for essentially its entire time in the franchise. It should come as no real surprise that it's pretty much been OU ever since Generation 4. And to many, it's far and away the greatest pseudo-legendary of all time. But I just find one other to be a bit better. And the greatest pseudo-legendary ever is Tyranitar. Where do I even begin with my sweet, pooky Tyranitar? Literally everything about it is just so incredible. And I think pretty much everyone agrees with me when I say that it is the greatest pseudo-legendary ever. First, I'll highlight its design. It's an absolute 10 out of 10. Seeing as it's literally based on one of the most iconic fictional characters ever, I'd say it goes above and beyond. And with all its 6 spikes and its underrated color combination, it's just always looked so epic and so clean. Also, its menacing and beastly kaiju-esque design really sticks out amongst a lackluster Johto Pokédex. Then in battle, Tyranitar is rather unique. What's incredible about it is that its typing really isn't that good. However, it's still able to be a monster in battle in spite of that. That all really just speaks as to how great of a Pokemon it really is. Of course, its ability Sandstream is just great. It gives it an instant special defense boost while also chipping away at your opponent. Then its stats are also very solid. It can both tank hits and deal some massive damage as well. And with it getting access to Dragon Dance, it can quickly turn into a monster of a sweeper. T-Tar also got a very powerful Mega Form in Generation 6. While it was a very welcome addition, and it definitely made it hit a whole lot harder, I honestly don't think Tyranitar even needed one, because on its own, it's always been incredible. I also simply can't understate the importance that Tyranitar has played to the franchise as a whole. The Dark typing was introduced in Generation 2, and instead of Game Freak showing it off with some new legendary or starter, they instead opted to make Tyranitar the poster boy for the new typing, and it absolutely lived up to and exceeded all expectations. Tyranitar is my all-time favorite pseudo, and I also think it's objectively the best in battle as well. It has truly stood the test of time and will always be one amazing Pokemon. Well guys, that's that. Those are every single pseudo-legendaries ranked from worst to best, according to me. Be sure to let me know what your rankings are in the comments section below. Also, check out these other videos on screen now for more Pokemon content. Thanks guys!